Episode of Rendezvous with Anza Saqib on CxO Global TV. CxO Global Forum is a knowledge sharing platform for all C levels across Pakistan and the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy. Every time we interview somebody, they're either a thought leader, a domain expert, an influencer, a global disruptor, but they are always people who have had a considerable amount of experience, who have a lot of knowledge, who have learned a lot, who are the movers and shakers of their area of expertise. So today as well, we've got a very special gentleman joining us all the way from UAE. He is the managing director at Strategy Focused Group and an international keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ron Thomas with. Hi, Ron.
Hi, how are you? Glad to be here.
I'm very well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ron, I've gone through your LinkedIn profile and wow, you have achieved quite a bit on an international scale, and there's so many successes that you have. However, I would like to know where your journey started, where you grew up, what courses did you study in college, how did you end up where you are at in your journey right now?
Well, I think that would take more than an hour, so I'm going to kind of give you the short version of that. I grew up in the U.S. And I worked in New York City for basically the vast majority of my life before I moved to Saudi Arabia and then to Dubai. I worked for IBM twice during my career. I left IBM and I went to work for a company called Martha Stewart Living in New York. And that was probably the most exciting role I've had in quite a while, because it was 6 months post-startup. And if you know, in a startup, you are kind of in a petri dish and you can experiment. And we experimented with so many workforce initiatives, excellent onboarding program, and we were able to just test out different things. We have won an array of awards, and it was just an exciting time. But eventually, like anything else, I moved on and I left and I went to Xerox and I worked in their HR consulting practice. But it was something kind of different happened at that time. I get an email from a search firm based in Saudi Arabia concerning a chief human resource officer's role based out of Riyadh. And I applied for it and I expressed interest and I eventually got that job, and I moved from New York City to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow. Must have been a big change from there.
180 degrees, and from work cultures to mindset. But it gave me an opportunity to look at life and work from a different perspective, because people in New York tend to think it's all about the way that we do things there. And now you're looking from the outside in. That was a different perspective, and trying to find a common ground between the two. And it was very exciting. I stayed up a little over a year, and then I was recruited to move to Dubai as CEO for a Great Place to Work. And I came here for that assignment, and I was there for a little over a year. And at the end of that time, I started my own firm, which is Strategy Focused Group. And we've been in business now. This is probably going into I'm going to say 5th or 6th year, but we've been around a while. So that kind of brings us to now.
Right. Wow. Ron, what a journey so far. And, it's been quite inspiring, because you've also seen a shift in cultures, a shift in work ethic. I would like to begin by asking you, how have you seen a difference in the work ethic in the human resource that's available in the West, in let's say the Big Apple, New York, versus the KSA or the MENA region?
Okay. You know what? I'm going to frame that a little differently. After I've, been exposed to so many different cultures across the regions, one of the most important things to try and understand about a company is the DNA of that organization. That could be the culture of the company. That could be the age of the company. A startup, having worked in a post-startup environment, to coming to a legacy company, change is easier in the startup company. So initiative that you try and propel, you may experience some roadblocks. Change is hard because the culture could be a fixed mindset. And I know from my experience, I work better in a growth mindset organization. So, when you hear mindset, you think of individuals. I tend to think of organizations. I don't do well, or I would not do well in fixed mindset. So framing it that way, that's the difference I found in working in various type organizations and cultures. I do a lot of work in Singapore. I was just telling, the gentleman earlier today, I just finished an assignment out of Singapore that I was working on for the past 4 days. That's a different culture than, say, a Saudi Arabia. The workforce is younger. The HR professionals are a lot younger. They're looking to grow their skills versus maybe a legacy or family-owned business inside of Saudi Arabia, which there are a lot of businesses. So there's a lot of context under each organization. And I would always caution, young college graduates, try and understand the culture of the company that you're interviewing. Try and ask questions centered around the way that things work there, the way that they promote their people, the career development, the number of roles that were filled externally versus the number of roles that were filled internally, which means it's a build culture, and they're cognizant of the fact that they have to build their workforce as much as possible. And as a last resort or skills resort, they would venture to go outside to, find it on the open market. So I think culture is a bigger insight for me in trying to understand that and understand the makeup inside of an organization.
Right, absolutely. Well, one of the things, Ron, that these days, and since I am a millennial as well, I've noticed that with a lot of the millennials, they do a lot of job shifts, right? So they're working with an organization for about 2-3 years, and then they want a change and they feel like they've reached a point of stagnation. Do you think this is the right kind of approach to be taking? Or is there something that they need to improve on or maybe learn? Because I remember when my father was working, or grandfather, they used to serve in the same industry, the same company for decades. And that's how, people climbed up the corporate ladder. But now I've seen the trend is from shift to one firm to the other, and maybe, shift between domains as well.
So globally, in the US, the average tenure is about 2.6 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at it from a talent perspective. And this is why I think lots of times organizations get it wrong, because they would look at the person that has 4 jobs in 2 years, that had 4 jobs, 2 years average each, so that's 8 years, versus the one that had 2 jobs over a 4-year period. And they may think there's more value in the person because they would label a person without even knowing the story as a job hopper. Well, that job hopper could have been exposed to 4 different technologies. They could have been exposed to 4 different growth mindsets or companies that are on their way up. So in a lot of cases, if it's through the lens of talent, there's more value in a person that's shifted because they've been exposed to more versus the other one. But here's another way of looking at it. You look at a job description and say, we want an engineer. We want an engineer that has 10 years experience. But then when you read throughout, they're using the words like they want an innovative mindset, they want an agile thinking, and they want all these key buzzwords, which may not connect to long-term tenure. I saw a job posting that they wanted 20 years of experience doing one job. But meanwhile, they're wanting innovation, breakthrough thinking, and all these kinds of things. For the most part, they don't connect.
Absolutely.
So that's the way of looking at it. So again, when you talk about culture of organizations, the mindset of leadership that says we will only hire people that understand the industry. So we only want retail bankers. Meanwhile, banking is moving to cloud, but you still want to hire people with that mindset. So I think that dynamic is going to have to change.
Absolutely. Very well said. But one of the things that you rightly pointed out was this new buzzword called the agile environment, right? And in a post-pandemic, there is a need to revise our social contract, or maybe advance a new social contract, because about close to 1.6 billion of the most vulnerable economy workers, that's your global labor markets, they've lost their capacity to earn a decent living. And there are inadequacies in the safety net for a majority of the world's working class, the working population. So we have identified a lot of gaps. Two things: what do the workers here or the employees need to do here, and what do businesses need to now keep in mind? Because obviously with them, cost cutting is also an issue.
Okay. I'm going to take it two different approaches. I'm going to address the workers first. First of all, you own your career. You're in charge of your learning. Don't depend on some organization to send you to one course a year or whatever it is. With YouTube, with reading your industry newsletters, Harvard Business Review magazine, not magazine, but Harvard Business Review website, Korn Ferry. There's a whole lot of ways that you can upskill yourself. Where's the profession heading, and what can you find to upskill yourself on your own? Because the days of waiting for that budget, and if companies' earnings and revenue have been, impacted, a lot of those training budgets or upskilling budgets are going to be cut. So how can I make myself marketable? Because I'm in control of that. The days of the mothership taking care of all of that's pretty much over with. And if you work from that context, you will develop yourself as much as possible. You're going to have to read more. It's a learning journey, and everyone stays on that. When this pandemic hit a little over a year ago, our business model was completely disrupted because 80% of my work was traveling across the globe.
Right, absolutely.
I had to learn all of this. I had to learn how to interact, facilitate. I couldn't sit around waiting for all of this to open up and I can get on a flight again. I didn't see that happening. So during that lockdown period, I think 4 to 6 weeks, I was online every day watching videos. How do I do this? How do I connect with this? What happens with lighting, sound, all of these kinds of things? Because that's where it was headed. And the companies that I was working with, they weren't going to bring me in. That's out because Asia is very strict. And even to this day, it still has not opened up for outsiders to come in. And the vast majority of my business was in that Singapore, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur kind of cortex. And that's why,
Absolutely.
So I say that to say, you're going to have to own it. From the organization side, you're going to have to realize that and begin the process. So you look at, I mentioned banks. If you're closing down branches, what are you going to do for your tellers? What are you going to do for your customer service people and everyone employed in that bank? You could have had 4 tiers on an org chart. You can't bring all of them over, but can you make an honest effort to upskill those tellers through assessments to see who can transition over? We understand that everyone is not going to be able to make the transition, but every organization is going to have to spend extra time as opposed to running to finance, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way, and start trying to figure out how many heads I can cut. Let's start first with how many people can I save, and we do everything we can possibly do to save them, and even the ones that we have to let go, what can we do to make sure they land? The landing is a lot softer as opposed to a hard landing. You come in on a Friday and say you're Thursday and say you're out. Good luck, and you go back home and your family and everybody's there waiting on you, and that's all you got out of 10 years of service, 15 years of service.
Oh yeah, 15 years of service. So
we owe them that.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that a lot of the onus is on the workers or the employees to, invest in their continuous development. However, if they are dedicated workers, and I see a lot of companies now, especially with the MNCs and the FMCG sector, we see that some of their senior leadership has been around for maybe, a decade or more than that. And at the fast rate that technology is progressing, for instance, somebody who's a C-level at an FMCG, for that matter, is probably not as well aware of even using Google Meets or Zoom calls or ever. But is the onus then not on the company to educate them and train them? And how much of an investment do training departments and HR need to make in their people?
Well, I can't give you how much they should invest, but if that's just a core part of your group, an organization is going to have to think of that. So if you're thinking about restructuring a business plan, you want to concentrate on the people that's going to be impacted. And you know what, the analogy you made for senior leaders that don't know how to use, you mentioned technology, but you know, let's say you were working in an organization and the transformation is to a point and you don't have those skills. Well, you know what? To be realistic, you knew this was coming. If I'm in banking, I know things are moving to cloud. If I'm in retail, I know it's moving to e-commerce. I don't need an organization to tell me that they're going to send me out for an e-commerce executive leadership program or whatever it is, because this is the transition point. If I'm pulsing my industry, I know things are coming. And I need to start preparing myself just in case this is coming. And if that's technological,
right. You mean a contingency?
Yes. So we all are going to have to spend some time thinking about what the next 3 to 5 years may look like, and go through that process. Are my skills going to be relevant 3 to 5 years out? Because I use the metaphor again. This is a learning journey. Until you close your eyes, you're going to stay in that phase if you want to progress. Now, sometimes there'll be curveballs thrown your way, and it may decimate, it may make some tragic changes in your life, but you know, you can have a pity party, but sooner or later you're going to have to realize that you're going to have to drive this. So when I focus on the employee side, you're going to have to drive this. Do not put all of your hope and faith in an organization, because they may not have you as their first level of thought or concern as they're making these changes. So I want to be way ahead of the curve myself in working through making contacts, talking with people, and I'm on a constant journey to try and be at near that bullseye as much as possible. So when and if and ever it wakes up, things start to turn around again, I'm somewhat valuable because I've gone through some things, I've learned from that. So a term I use is build from disaster. COVID-19 disrupted. Why did it disrupt? On a personal basis, what do you need to do? What can you build from the disaster of COVID so that you build a better product coming out of COVID? You know, shipbuilding. I saw a special the other night, a shipbuilder. Every time there's a ship mishap, people that design ships, they want to know what caused that, because they want to make sure the next luxury line or whatever they build is going to be able to, that will not be a problem in the next generation of it. So if you've had hiccups, why did it happen? What did you learn from it? What can you build, whether it be capability, to make sure that it happens again or something comes close to that, you're somewhat prepared as much as possible. Nobody has a crystal ball.
Absolutely. Ron, and how beautifully put. You know, speaking on one of these of disruption, I was reading the Harvard Business Review the other day, and I came across this sentence that really stuck by me in terms of how the HR is now evolving. And it says that the post-digital economy thrives on difference, diversity, and divergent thinking. What do you think of this statement?
I think that's correct, because the post-COVID model is different from the pre-COVID model. What did the airline industry learn from this? What does the hospitality industry learn from this? You know, travel has been decimated. Some companies, the technology companies like Zoom, their stock was up almost 400% 1 year in. So technology is going to be a key driver moving forward. But again, you're learning from disaster. What do you take away from that to build this next iteration? So I'm giving a speech, I think, next week, and it's going to focus on reimagine. What if you had to start all over again to build a work environment, to build a workforce? If you had to start all over again and you didn't have a reference model, you didn't have a reference model for 8 days a week inside of an office. You didn't have those things that we didn't have.
Absolutely.
Any of that. So I had to reimagine the workforce, what it looked like. And this is what organizations are going through now. So you look at the 4-day work week, you look at a hybrid model, 2 days in, 3 days out, all these kinds of things. If you had to reimagine with no anchor point, all of these things would be different. And the other thing,
Absolutely.
I can just speak of two cultures and organizations, legacy organizations versus a kind of new approach to managing people. The companies that are newer and have a younger C-suite mindset, growth mindset, they experimented with everything. When you read articles about companies experimenting before they work with, I read a great book, Netflix, No Rules, Rules, and how they built a model of success, and there are no rules. There's no HR policy. If you do this, you do that. There's none of that. So we hire adults and we expect people to be adults. That's reimagining a workplace.
Absolutely. And I think that is, part of how you shape people and their strategies in the fourth industrial revolution. Because if we talk about that, one of the major concerns now is going to be, and I'm sure you hear this a lot as well, is that with the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning, a lot of jobs now are going to be made redundant in the future, if not now. What do you tell young people? What do you tell college grads? What are the skills that will make them future ready? And what will at least promise them a career for the decades to come?
Yeah, first of all, there's no promise for a long-term career anymore. There's no promise for that. There's going to be...
Okay, so what's their best bet then?
So there's going to be different remodels. So it's going to kind of work if I enter my entry level into a position based on whether I'm an architect or whatever it is. I'm consistently kind of sensing what's going on out there because I'm going to make an adjustment. One of the hottest areas in architecture now is because of COVID, is the work environment. How is that going to be different? If you look at a work environment years ago, everyone with cubicles, all these kinds of things, versus the new workforce and people that design offices, they don't even cling to that old model because now it's open. You build it whichever way you want. You don't need a desk for every person, And so when I talk about reimagining, all of these things could be reimagined in doing that. I teach a couple of courses at various colleges, and that's one of the things I try and instill with them is that you take what you have to start, but this is a learning process. And it's kind of like through osmosis. You're going to make a lot of changes. If you think of working for the next 20 years, 30 years, you may go through 4 or 5 iterations, or you may completely start over and do something else. How many people that that are trained lawyers that are doing something else, or accountants that started out in accounting and now they're doing something else? And that old anchor that they came into with that's completely shredded, and they reimagine what something would look like, work or whatever it may be, and they're doing something totally different now. And I think that model from people coming into college, you take what you have because that's going to get you to the table. But you're going to have to be aware. Self-awareness is hugely important of what's happening not only in your career, but what's happening in the industry. The industry you're in or the industry you may have interest in. Right. And your role is to try and maneuver as much as possible to get through there. They're not looking to come in and work 25 years for you. For organizations, forget about that. That will never happen again.
Yeah, but strictly speaking, in terms of, I'm sorry to cut you off, but since you raised a very important point, organizations these days, they are now, there are a lot of changes in job roles and titles. So people are no longer called manager sales, they're called manager customer success, or, they're no longer, so there's new terms like customer experience managers or like the chief experience officers. Similarly, I was reading this case study and, they talked a lot about, there's a lot of buzzword around the word experience now. So when we talk about experience, it also, a majority of it talks about the experience of employees. So if you want to achieve success and growth in your sales, then you need to improve the employee experience. What exactly does employee experience entail?
From the time I submit my application to the time I start onboarding to the 2.5 years or whatever it is that I'm there, what was that experience like? Now, that whole thinking model has been done in marketing for years. That's marketing research. They've done that. Any company could get marketing person can get up and give you a whole outlook as to how they analyze the customers the segmentation of the customers, to try to understand the customer experience. But a lot of CEOs, such as Richard Branson, says, you take care of your people and they will take care of your customers.
Absolutely.
So that new level leader thinks through the employees, and if that employee is customer facing, that will take care of itself. But if you screw this up, don't even be concerned when your numbers come back and they're tanking, because this experience level goes both ways. So here's what I used to say when I was with Great Place to Work. Which would be more important? If I came in and gave you your scores for employee experience, engagement, whatever you want to call it, and they were at 40%, 30%. A lot of organizations, when they say, oh, well, so is there anything we can do? And right away, they're thinking quick fixes. Well, we can do coffee, we can do lunch. Let's have a Friday get together. No, your culture is rotten. You have to fix that.
Absolutely.
If your numbers came in from the customer side and was 40%, work would stop until they fixed it, because their thinking is this has more importance. Well, my thought is this has more importance. You fix this, this will take care of itself, because if this group is facing the customer, they're taking all that bad experience, and who do they take it out of? They're taking it out on the customer base. So the CX, EX, all those things are being talked about, but people, and I think COVID has shown that you have to worry and be concerned as much as you can for your workforce. These are the people who make the numbers grow.
Absolutely.
And the numbers are grown through interaction from this side. Whether you call me a customer service person, a salesperson, it doesn't matter. That's just a branding piece. But am I interacting the proper way to grow the business, to grow revenue?
Wow. Ron, those were very, very enlightening words, but now I'd like to know a little more about your personal journey. We've spoken a lot about your successes, but in the words of Elon Musk, if you're not failing enough, you're not innovating enough. Have you seen any failure in your life, and what has that taught you?
Yeah, that's about another hour. I've had so many failures, in different aspects of my life. When I talked about leaving Martha Stewart, I left there after 9 years of extreme success, and I went out to a job market with no job, and I figured I was going to turn it around. Well, that took a while to do that, because that was the 2007, 2008 financial meltdown. But learning from disaster, what did I learn from that? I started writing more. I started speaking more. I started expanding beyond the New York HR mindset and more towards leadership, all these kinds of things. And I just kind of repackaged everything. I look back on it now and I see that transition, but failure is just a temporary roadblock. If you ride down a street, and I thought of this last night, I was coming from someplace and I saw a big detour sign, but my destination was beyond that. But it was guided, turn here, and next thing I know, I was back on track. I said, that's life. Everything is planned, everything is working, and then there's something here, that roadblock, and you can't get around that roadblock. You may try to make another roadblock, but you have to keep maneuvering. It's kind of like the early version of GPS, and it would keep coming back to the thing, recalibrating. Life is that way. It's a constant recalibrating.
Life works like that. Absolutely. What a profound thought. Ron, unfortunately, we're coming towards the end of the interview, and we've got limited time. But there's two things that I'd like to speak to you about. First one being, since you have been exposed to a lot of different styles of corporate governance and leadership, what exactly does leadership mean to you? How do you define leadership or successful leadership in the corporate world?
Relationship with people, relationship with that workforce. The leader who spends time understanding the people, not only your peers, go all the way down to your org chart. And what's the last person on that org chart? Could you go up and have a conversation with that person? Would that person understand what we're trying to accomplish? Until we're able to cascade all these lofty missives down to the lowest person on that org chart, it's going to be cloudy. And we have to connect. So this whole piece about leadership, empathy, post-COVID, that's probably bubbles up to the top. You have to show that you're concerned about the people you work for. And you build that connection, you strengthen that connection, they will in turn take it the other route and connect to the customers.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
Ron. Thank you for joining us. And I would like to ask you, as a last question, as a going away thought, how important do you think are forums like CxO Global?
I think very important because here's kind of another thought I have is that sometimes we're so involved in work that our head is down. And I always tell people once a week, take some time and look to see what's going on. Take some time and sit around and read something. Read a book. Listen to a podcast. Get out of this work mindset and give your brain mechanism a chance to breathe. You'd be surprised the insights that come out from taking a walk or taking a hot shower once you've come back from an exercise. But you have to give yourself that opportunity to do that. You can't just consistently 99.9% of your time always consumed with work, because the work flag lifts and everything bubbles up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ron. It's been an absolute pleasure. We look forward to hearing more from you in our Global Thought Space as well, which is our digital session for all thought leaders. And please stay in touch, and we look forward to learning from you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me as a guest. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was it from Ron Thomas and myself. If you would like to learn more about him or the kind of work that Strategy Focus Group are doing, you can find them on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about us, that's www.cxoforum.global. We look forward to seeing you next time with another special guest. Thank you and have a great day.